Tonight, no end yet to the wool crisis. The superpowers prepare for the summit. And an amazing trek by an amazing man and his dog. Good evening, thanks for joining us on the National Late Edition. High-level talks in Melbourne have failed to reach an agreement over the crisis in Australia's wool industry. The Australian Wool Corporation and the Federal Minister for Primary Industries are still at loggerheads over the best way to market the mounting wool stockpile. Mr. Cairns says no resolution was reached over the future of the floor price. Despite the uncertainty in the wool market, sales will continue next week as planned. Recent speculation has caused a loss of buyer confidence in the wool floor price, and many industry leaders have called for the sales to be suspended until the issue is resolved. The new chief executive of Elders IXL, Peter Bartels, is already on his way to England to check over the group's business interests. Mr. Bartels left Melbourne almost immediately after taking over from John Elliott, the man who built Elders into one of the country's biggest corporate empires. His decision to step down came sooner than expected. However, he will remain as a non-executive chairman. His announcement came after the close of trading on the stock exchange today, where Elders shares finished down 2 cents. The overall market indicator dropped more than 3 points, while the Australian dollar was steady. Another high flyer is on his way down. Kevin Parry, who financed the unsuccessful defence of the America's Cup in 1987, has been ordered to pay the State Bank of Victoria more than $9 million.
It's been a long, hard road for Kevin Parry since the heady days of the 1987 America's Cup Challenge. At the time, he was on a roll, beating Alan Bond for the right to defend the Cup and at the helm of a fast-expanding business empire. Things came undone a year later. Languishing under growing debts, his flagship company, the Parry Corporation, fell prey to Hong Kong-based predators. The Hang Lung Development Company ousted Mr. Parry in a bitter boardroom coup. Today, after a 6-week hearing, Mr. Parry was ordered to pay more than $9 million to the State Bank of Victoria. The court ruled that Kevin Parry personally guaranteed the State Bank loan and was personally responsible for the debt. It rejected his claim that he'd acted as an agent for the Parry Corporation and the company should indemnify him.
American and Philippine officials have agreed to further negotiations on the future of U.S. bases in the Philippines. The agreement was announced after 5 days of talks in Manila on extending the lease on the bases beyond September of next year. No date was set for the next round of negotiations. A light passenger plane has crashed into a suburb of Manila, killing 25 people. The twin-engine Beechcraft with 21 people aboard came down 3 minutes after takeoff on a domestic flight. There were no survivors. The pilot had radioed the control tower asking for permission to return, but never made it. The plane nosediving into the house of a Japanese businessman. The aircraft exploded on impact, breaking in two and killing the sleeping family of 4. It was the 3rd plane crash in Manila in 3 weeks. The Prime Minister of the rebel Republic of Lithuania has finally got to talk with Mikhail Gorbachev. She flew to Moscow not knowing whether the Soviet president would see her or not.
She came to Moscow seeking talks to end 10 weeks of stalemate. Prime Minister Prunskinya wanted a meeting with Mikhail Gorbachev. She was delivering a new package of concessions. Lithuania would suspend all laws passed since its March 11th Declaration of Independence. It would not, however, revoke the declaration itself. Gorbachev had been talking tough, earlier telling reporters the declaration must be repealed and denouncing Lithuania for what he called adventurism. But he did agree to a meeting. And after a 2-hour session, Mrs. Prunskinya said, while he suggested Lithuania revoke its independence declaration, Gorbachev did not insist. A clearly pleased prime minister said Gorbachev agreed that formal talks could begin as soon as Lithuania's parliament approved her package of concessions.
U.S. Secretary of State James Baker will raise the Baltic crisis in his talks with the Soviet leader, which have just got underway. He's already spoken to other Soviet officials on a range of subjects.
The Baltics is just one of many internal problems in the Soviet Union upon which the Bush administration has been expressing itself. Freedom of religion is another. In an attempt to quiet U.S. criticism, Shevardnadze today invited Baker to take a brief tour. They visited the historical seat of the Russian Orthodox Church at Zagorsk, just outside of Moscow. This spectacular showplace of the church was intended to show Baker there is new tolerance for religion in the Soviet Union. That message turned into a minor embarrassment for Shevardnadze when he was showing Baker a nearby village. The two were accosted by a 76-year-old woman who complained that authorities would not allow her village church to open. It had been closed since World War II. She also complained that she had to sell her cow because times were so rough and she didn't have enough money to make ends meet. While Baker remained silent, an uncomfortable Shevardnadze promised the church would be opened and the old woman's pension increased.
Electioneering in Romania has ended in violence in Timișoara, birthplace of the country's revolution against the iron fist of Nicolae Ceausescu. Several thousand supporters of the National Salvation Front gathered in the city's Opera Square. Their rally was disrupted by a few hundred opponents of the front who claim its leaders remain communists. Some stormed the podium and pulled down flags. Police and troops in the square did not intervene. The Romanians go to the polls for the first time in decades on Sunday. Actor Marlon Brando's son, Christian, has been arrested over the killing of a Tahitian who was his sister's boyfriend. Police believe the boyfriend beat up Cheyenne Brando, who is pregnant.
Police didn't know what to expect when they responded to a call to 911 made by Marlon Brando himself. What they discovered was the body of 26-year-old Dag Droulet of Tahiti, shot once in the head. Brando's son, Christian, was arrested shortly thereafter and booked for murder. Police say he and the victim got into a heated and deadly argument.
There was an allegation of some mistreatment of Cheyenne Brando, Mr. Brando's 20-year-old daughter, by the victim. Exactly what that treatment may have involved, I'm not sure at this point in time. But apparently Christian Brando took exception to that and some sort of dispute ensued, resulting in a shooting.
The Japanese businessman who bought a Van Gogh for a record $130 million earlier this week has reportedly snapped up another masterpiece. Renoir's painting of an outdoor Parisian dance in the 1870s was auctioned in New York. The winning bidder apparently was the emeritus chairman of the Daishowa Paper Company.
Hold on. Hold on, everyone else. $71 million.
And that's a mere $100 million Australian, making the Renoir the second most expensive painting in the world. And now the weather for the start of the weekend. Rather cold over southeastern Australia, with showers in Sydney, Melbourne and Hobart. Some showers also for Darwin, but fine in the other capital cities. And that's just about it from Late Edition. We'll say farewell this week with a story about an amazing American who's hiking 3,000 kilometres along the Appalachian Mountains. So do have a good weekend. That's, of course, a safe one. From me until Monday, good night.
A poet said these mountains are kissed by the morning mist. A natural haze inspires names like the Great Smokies and the Blue Ridge. But Bill Irwin cannot see any of this. He is totally blind. Still, with his seeing eye dog, he intends to walk the full length of the trail over terrain that hikers who can see find difficult.
It's just a wonderful spiritual experience for me.
49 years old, Irwin has been blind for more than 20 years from an eye disease. He says God wanted him to walk the trail to inspire others and to show his faith.
Good boy.
Orient, the seeing eye dog, had to be retrained. In the city, the dog stops at objects more than 2 inches high. Now he's been taught to lead Bill over rocks and fallen trees, along narrow footbridges where a misstep could be disastrous, and to follow the scent of other hikers to stay on course.
He knows by the way I walk whether I'm stumbling or comfortable or whatever, and he adjusts the walking speed to that, and he knows about what'll trip me up.
Bill Irwin and his dog have to leave the trail every week or so for supplies. Local residents or hikers direct them to stores, help with the shopping, and then direct them back to the trail. Most days end with a cup of tea with fellow hikers, followed by a simple meal of rice or pasta before sleep in preparation for another day on the trail. Bill's heightened senses of smell, touch, and presence make these scenes real.
You got to look at being out here in God's world as being a guest in someone else's home, that you have to blend in with it rather than trying to get it to blend in with what you want to do.
What Bill Irwin wants to do is to arrive in Maine, the end of the trail, before the end of summer.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-hey.
Sunday Rugby this week has something for everyone. With the French arriving, we go back to the famous test of 1968 at the SCG against Australia. Also, we join 50,000 fans at Twickenham for the Pilkington Cup final between champions Bath and Gloucester. And David Campese, Mark Ella and their Randwick teammates show us how they won the Centenary Sevens at Melrose in Scotland. Sunday Rugby at 5, only on ABC.